Hey guys, okay, Sonia, so we are live. Hi everyone who is live with us right now. Can you quickly, just a quick check. First thing, can you hear me? Can you please let me know in the chat section?
Yes, can you hear us? Yay, hi, hello.
Yay, people can hear us. Awesome. Okay, there are more people who have joined us. Some two others apart from who have already responded. Can you hear us, guys? I want to make sure that everyone we're audible, loud and clear to each and everyone out here, so that each and everybody is getting the immense value that we are going to provide them today. It's clear. Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
So cool. So let's begin this AMS session. So first of all, thank you so much again, guys, for joining us. My name is Rashmi, a community specialist at Designhill, and this AMS session we have collaborated with Sonia Yim, who is a lettering and illustrator artist who has been doing this from last 4+ years and have been doing it very successfully. So a bit introduction about our speaker for today. I'll introduce her a bit, and of course she's the best person to introduce herself later on. So I'll give you guys a bit information about her and a bit about who we are, who is Print Shop at Designhill, for those people who are new to our AMAs, because we have been doing these AMAs and webinars from quite a long period of time now. This is our 12th one, if I'm not wrong. And so this is, these AMAs and webinars we are sort of, helping the community by doing these, AMAs, by collaborating with artists like Sonia to help you guys. So a bit about Sonia is that the fun fact is she was not a artist before. She was working as in accounting field, and then she has changed her domain to she has started working on Illustrator, and then thought of doing bit of a different in terms of her approach, and then combined lettering and Illustrator together to come up with storytelling approach to sort of you know to sort of give a name to the design that she's doing, that she's creating. So and she's a mom and doing this as a full time. So thank you, Sonia, for joining us today for this AMA session. It means a lot, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Awesome. So a bit of an introduction about us, who we are. So Print Shop by Designhill is an online marketplace for all the artists at a global level to come and upload their artwork on thousands of products which are listed on the platform, ranging from t-shirt to hoodies to phone cover, laptop covers, anything that you can think of is on the platform. So it is the platform is for people like you, artists like you, who can come on the platform and upload your artwork to the global customer base. You don't have to worry about anything else. No worry about shipping the product or marketing your product. It's on Designhill. Designhill is doing it for you. So if you do not know about how you can start off your journey on Print Shop by Designhill, please visit the website. I'll just share the link with you guys. You can visit this website. It is called designhill.com/shop artist, and you can see it. The whole process is mentioned over there and how you can start your journey. So that's a bit about Print Shop. You can DM us on an Instagram account, and we would be able to help you there also. So welcome back again, Sonia, to this webinar, to this AMA session. I'll just discuss the flow of this AMA session with the live attendees today, so that they are also clear about the fact that how we are taking this forward. So guys, we will be I already have a list of questions with me that you have asked in the registration form itself. I have chosen the best questions which are more relevant to this AMA session, and which were asked more frequently. So but we will also take your live questions. Don't worry about that. We have a question section in the live stream platform. So go to that questions tab, ask your questions there, and we'll come to the questions tab, question section in between to see what questions you want the answers of, and we will try to answer your question as well. So we have sort of limited time to do this AMA session, but we will try to answer the maximum questions that we can. So let's start off this session. Sonia, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Uh, so my first question for you,
Yes.
Sonia, is that how did you started your lettering and Illustrator journey, and how it has been since you have started?
Yeah, so as you kind of quickly introduced, where I didn't go to design school or art school, anything like that. I was a full-time working mom as an accountant, and then I decided to become a stay-at-home mom. So during that time, I started to just learn Illustrator. It was just like a hobby kind of thing where, taking care of my kids, I have some extra time, so why not just learn something? So I just started watching YouTube videos, learn about Illustrator, and by accident, really, I found this platform called Soniaydesigns. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the website, but basically it's like a crowdsourcing kind of platform where they hold many contests. And the only thing was that you didn't have to be a designer to really apply or participate in the contest. So I just did that kind of like as a practice. But luckily, the very first contest I participated in, I happened to win it. I really didn't know what I was doing at the time, but it was a moment where, oh my gosh, like somebody is actually paying for my design. So then I just kind of practiced my Illustrator skills by doing those contests. So I got into like logo design, branding, all that kind of stuff. And then I had a period where I thought, for logos, if you do hand lettering or typography, if you make it yourself, it just looks so much better. So why not kind of learn that? And during that time, Lauren Hom, who's like a big in the lettering and the design industry, she came out with what's called a homework. So it's basically a weekly prompt challenge that you do. Anybody could participate as like a practice. So it's a weekly thing. So I just participated in doing the homework, and I just fell in love with lettering aspect. So then I got into lettering, and then I kind of combined with my illustration. And then I became like more of I still do logos and branding, but I kind of became more of like a hand lettering and illustration designer. So I did definitely have some unique creative journey, if you will. So that's where I am today. So I just call myself, I promote myself as a designer, as a big umbrella, but I specialize in hand lettering and illustration and kind of telling a creative story.
So guys, again, I'm repeating this. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the questions tab. And if you have any follow-up questions also, we would be happy to take it. So please put it there so that we can, quickly go there also and take your questions.
Yes.
And yes, one important thing, we will also be rolling out polls in between to understand how this AMA session is going. Are you guys enjoying it? So please answer those polls as well. It is a request. Okay, cool. Sonia, the second question that I have for you is that you talked about that you are not from a lettering and illustrator background, but still you started off journey by self-learning all the things through YouTube and other platforms and other courses, right? So in the same way, there are a lot of industry who face a lot of challenge while in different domain, how to create their own style or how to go this whole journey. So
the connection. I couldn't hear that. Yeah, I couldn't hear the last part. Can you repeat that? Sorry, my connection was
no issues. So the question was that what challenges newcomers face in this industry when they want to start out, and how they can overcome the fears and challenges.
Yes. So this is based on my experience. I feel like the biggest challenge I personally had when I was starting out is the gap. So what I mean by that is sometimes, I mean, a lot of times when you look at other artists' work or somebody you look up to, their work is so great, and then you look at your skill right now, and there's this huge gap between where you are today and then where you want to go, essentially, right? So I think that big gap can be the biggest challenge. And for me, it is good to have understand that gap and having that eye that where you want to go. That's very important. But at the same time, you have to know that it takes time to get to where that person want to be. So the biggest thing that I would advise is that just take small steps at a time, like, and just have a small goals at a time. You can't really look too far, and the goal has to be sort of small enough where it is achievable. Because if you have such a high goal at the beginning, then obviously you're going to get discouraged. Like, you don't really know if you can get there, and then when you do get discouraged, most likely you might give up. So you might not even improve a little bit, right? So I would say, yes, it's good to have that goal, but at the same time, you would have to break that into small chunks where and something that is achievable and doable, and just keep on going that way. I think that that's the only best way I could say, because sometimes it's really hard to kind of look at that gap.
No, and I think that is such a cool advice to offer to all the newcomers in the industry, because what happens is that people are just rushing and trying to achieve that end goal and setting up targets for them which are non-achievable at a small period of time. And the skill gap that you mentioned is really really sort of helpful for the community, because if you want to get somewhere, you will have to be skilled about it, and taking small steps and setting achievable goals is one of the great advice for newcomers and beginners in the industry. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so Sonia, as one of the forte and skill that you have is about storytelling,
Yes.
using lettering and Illustrator. So I would like to understand that why and how storytelling is important as a whole. Why it is important?
Okay, so for me, this concept, the storytelling thing, it didn't really come to me at once. So when I started doing lettering, I quickly noticed how there are so many talented people who's really good in lettering, or there's so many talented people who's really good in illustration. And I felt like, especially not having too much experience in lettering or illustration, I was trying to find a way, I guess, to stand out from the crowd. As you know, the design industry is very saturated. So my thought was, what about if I combine, because there's a lot of people who was doing lettering at the time and a lot of people who was really good at illustration, but not so many who was doing both. So I thought, okay, maybe the way I could stand out is not necessarily with the technical skills, but maybe I could do something a little bit different. And for me, that was combining the lettering with the illustration aspect. And that kind of created this idea of storytelling. Because really, if you look at a quote, for example, and in any of my work that you see on Instagram, yes, there's a lettering aspect to it, but there's always some kind of illustration that complements to that lettering. And that in a whole kind of tells a story to the audience. And I think, well, again, when I started this, it wasn't really like a smart strategy or anything like that. It was really just for me finding a way to stand out. But as I've been doing this again and again and again, I feel that it is actually important because, well, for two reasons. Number one, you get to, well, as I said, the one thing is that you stand out. Obviously, not many people do this. Maybe if you come to an audience and they think, oh, like this is different. So this is a way to stand out. But at the same time, what I noticed over time is that you connect with your audience better. I feel like if I'm trying to tell a story of some sort and I just, let's say, have an illustration, everybody can interpret it a little bit differently. I mean, yes, they will kind of get where I'm going with this illustration, but not everybody will completely understand. I feel like combining the two and having that creative concept, it's just it just gives that extra to connect with your audience better. So for me, I think it's super important. It's a way to stand out, and it's also a way to connect with your audience, or even convey your story better with your audience.
Wow, and I think yeah, that's one of the most important thing to sort of have, is that you have to connect with your audience so that they can understand more about it, right? But
Yes.
okay, so that's about how why storytelling is important. But how when a starter or a newcomer have to sort of probably think of ways to tell a story in a very limited way in an artwork, and that story has to be probably compelling enough so that they can
Yeah.
connect to the audience. How this whole process goes by, to sort of create a compelling stories, what research work has to be done prior to creating a story, or
Uh-huh.
how the process goes by.
So my process, and again, this is just me, not that it's the right way of doing it, but my process typically starts with an idea. So there's actually two things that I think about. So number one is what kind of lettering or idea that I want to tell the audience. And then number two is what kind of emotion I want them to feel when they see my piece. So for example, and a lot of times I do a lot of like positive quotes or encouraging quote, then clearly I will choose a quote that's kind of motivating or encouraging, something like that. So that's number one. So you come up with a quote. Number two is, now, how am I going to tell this story, right? So then depending on the quote, I'll kind of think about, what's the best way that, well, one of the example I could just give you on top of my head is, for example, I just created a piece about a Halloween. The quote is, the challenge itself is to create something Halloween related. And so for that example, I wanted to obviously have a topic of Halloween, but I didn't want it to use like a common quote. So I said, let's get Hollow weird. So I just changed the last part of it, right? So that's my quote. So I come up with a quote. And then number two is the illustration aspect. Then I want to show something weird. So I'm thinking about, okay, what's the best way to maybe show something that's quirky, fun, but weird at the same time? So I had a pumpkin where a ghost was coming out of the pumpkin's head. So I thought that was kind of weird. So there's that illustration aspect of it. And then combining those two, the third aspect I added was like a gift. So I made it short animation so they could feel that even more. If you think about just the pumpkin with the ghost on the head versus a pumpkin and the ghost is actually coming out of the head, it gets a different feeling, right? So I'm thinking about, from a viewer perspective, do they really get this quote, the weird part? Another thing is the typography, where instead of saying Halloween, I put Hollow Weird, and I wanted to accentuate, emphasize the weird being different. So then I would use a different lettering style for that. So I'll have that in mind already. And even the way I did the typography for the weird is kind of weird. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like the wavy lettering. It's weird. So I'm even adding more to this story thing. So if you look at the whole thing, it looks like a really simple illustration, and my style is very just clean, simple. It's not really too complicated. And even technically wise, I don't have like awesome skills under my sleeves to create something, right? So for me, I'm kind of doing it differently by adding all these concepts, elements, and this thought process before I show it to the audience. I don't know if I explained it well.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know if it's better if I show the piece really quick. Do you want me to do that on Instagram?
sure.
Yeah, I can. I
Yeah.
can quickly show you what I was talking about this whole time. It is this piece I was talking about. Okay, so it's this one. Can you guys see it? Oops. So it was this piece. So this is a still image. Let's see if I can go down a little. This is a still image. And then if you click on it, I made this animation version. So you could see that it's coming out, and then the weird being a different typography, and it's also animated. Oh. Oh, Did that work?
You can see that. Okay.
Okay. I'm trying to turn it off. Let me see how to do. Oh, there. There you go. Oh, there you go. So that's was
Yeah,
it.
that's one of the creative ways of sort of putting your thought process, you know,
Yes.
together and then coming up with something creative. So that's how, guys, if you want to combine your probably if you want to first of all have that approach of storytelling with your design or artwork, you'll have to do a bit of a research work there and think about how you can connect with your audience, because the target audience might vary for each and everybody out there, so you'll have to think from the shoe of your target audience. What would they like to know about, what would they like the most, and then come up with something creative. So okay, cool. So Sonia, my next question is coming from
Yeah.
this whole conversation right now, and
Oh, okay.
and I remember I actually went through hundreds of questions while I was, sort of shortlisting these 20 questions, which are more frequently asked. And the question was that, okay, so now a lot of times what happens is that, a lot of artists are thinking about putting a lot of things together and coming up with new ideas, creative ideas, but at times they're just stuck somewhere and they're not able to think of something new. So how to
Yeah.
go about letting that creativity flow
Yeah.
and thinking about that creative things and creative things to come together and work together. So how to go about, so the crux of the question is how to let the creativity out every time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not possible to be like constantly creative, in my opinion. I do think that if you do feel stuck, and of course, it depends on, given that this is not client work, obviously, but I would say just take a break sometimes. Because for me, honestly, creativity doesn't come from actually, I mean, yes, it does come from doing it and creating, but a lot of times it comes from doing something else too. For example, I'll be watching a movie or reading a book and then some idea strikes. So to me, if you're stuck, you don't have to like be stressed out that you're stuck, you don't have the idea. Really just take a break, walk away from what you were doing, and kind of do something else. Like for me, honestly, I mean, truthfully, I have the opposite problem where I have too many ideas. I just don't have enough time to execute. But yes, there are times where I don't get good ideas. Like I would think of a quote, but I don't really know what illustration to do, or I'm just stuck. Then I will just drop it. And honestly, I never had a case where it would not come back. Like it would come back. It's really a matter of time. Really, I would just go, let's say, take a walk at the park, and suddenly the idea comes in, or just by looking at, a book or something else, or even, and I know sometimes they would say, don't look at the internet too much or Pinterest, like you're not, you're going to copy the idea, whatever. But I do think, for me personally, looking at somebody else's work also helps sometimes too. I love to go on dribble.com or Pinterest and just see what's out there. Not that I'm trying to copy or anything, but just looking at other art and other work. Sometimes those ideas kind of combine in my head and then I get good ideas. So I wouldn't really force it per se. Just kind of go with the flow, but then just do something else, distract yourself, and then it'll come back.
Basically finding inspiration from other platforms which exist,
Yes.
and then thinking about how you can make it on your own, right? How can
Yes.
use your own creativity to come up with something new. Yeah.
Yes, but it doesn't have to be just the platforms. It could be just anything, like going out to the nature, or go to the movies, or any other activities will do too.
Wow, that's such a cool idea. Going out, just taking a walk
Yeah.
in nature, going with
Yeah.
going for a movie, or going to a restaurant to have a good meal.
Yes, seriously,
Something new.
it helps. Yes.
Awesome. So okay, so just a quick announcement for those people again who have joined us recently, that if you have any questions, you can go and put it in the questions tab, and we will try to answer all of the questions that you can have. So Sonia, just quickly go to the questions tab, because I can see there are two questions asked by
Yes.
Prashant there. And His first question is, do you suggest any books or any website to start learning lettering and typography?
So this, to be really honest, I started lettering not too long ago personally. I think maybe year and a half or so. And I didn't really know what I was getting into. I didn't really look at books or anything. I just observed other people, how they did it. However, looking back, I am actually thinking about, and for those who don't know, I have a YouTube channel that I do have like mini tutorials and stuff, and this is one of the topics that I do want to cover. So I will let you guys know when that happens. But in the meantime, I don't have like a book recommendation for typography or lettering per se, but I do have books, and I actually have a link. Let me just add it there. From Austin Kleon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. I love all his series of his book. It's not specifically for lettering or typography, but it is for all creatives. So I would highly recommend. I just put it in the chat. I don't know if it went in. That was weird. Oh, there. Yeah. So if you go to the link, it'll have like 3 books. And that helped me in terms of creating in general. But at this time, I don't have like a list of books or anything like that for letterings and typography. But however, again, and I will add my channel here for those who's interested, but I am actually thinking about creating something like this just because I feel like, oh, this is something that I would have needed when I started. So let me just do that really quick. So this is my YouTube channel if anybody's interested. Right now, it's really focused on those self-taught designers because I was a self-taught designer, and it's my way of kind of giving back because I learned it from YouTube. So let me just type that up. So if you guys are interested, you guys can check that out. Oh. Soniaydesigns. There you go. There you go. Yes.
Got that. So I hope Prashant Sonia has answered your question. Okay, so he has also asked a follow-up question on that. A second question by him again, and he's. Can you just read out the first question by him?
Oh yes. So please tell, do you use a tab or just trace your pencil drawings with the mouse? So right now I use iPad Pro and Procreate. So for hand lettering illustration, I use software, the app called Procreate on my iPad Pro. For logo design and other stuff would be Adobe Illustrator. If I do use Adobe Illustrator, I have a pad that I use. I don't really draw with the mouse, and I actually no longer draw with pencil either. So if I do have a sketch, it'll be on my iPad Pro. I'll sketch it and I'll bring it over to Adobe Illustrator and vectorize it if it's needed. If not, it will just be on my iPad Pro. Hopefully I answered that question.
Okay. So I hope Prashant, Sonia has answered your question as well, and both of your questions are answered now, so that's cool. Okay. So moving forward, the next question that I have in my list is about how to develop your own style. So a lot of this is one of the questions that a lot of registrants has asked us that while they are starting out. In this journey of hand lettering and Illustrator, they are confused about figuring out their own styles,
Yeah.
And so, can you suggest some ways
Yes.
on that?
So honestly, this is actually the most common question I got recently. And I personally too thought I didn't really have a style. And my one advice I can give you is ask somebody else. Because for me too, for the longest time, I thought my style was so inconsistent because I would, let's say, for example, I would draw ladies in my drawing and all of the ladies look different, for example. And I felt like I'm just all over the place. I mean, I do lettering and illustration, but it was all over the place. But the thing is, a lot of people have told me that, oh, I can recognize your work. Your style is actually very consistent. So number one is just ask somebody else, because a lot of times you don't know that you have a style, and other people sees it a little bit differently. So again, my first advice is get a fresh set of eyes and ask their opinion and see if they could find a style. Another thing is, when I think of it as a style, is something that has to be consistent throughout. But when you say consistency, it's not just about how it's drawn and stuff like that. It's what you do, or what you're drawn to do. For example, the lady example I tell you, yes, when I do draw ladies in my lettering and illustration, they all look different. But the common theme here is that I do lady in my drawing. So that's like my style. Yes, they're drawn in a different way, but that is part of my style. I do hand lettering and illustration. Yes, they all look different, but me doing hand lettering and illustration, that is kind of like my style. So I would say look into your work and see what you're doing or you're drawn to do. For example, when you're trying to color, for me personally, when I try to color, I'm always drawn to bold, bright colors. That is part of my style. It's not something that I'm trying to do every single time. I'm just drawn to it. So I would say observe your work, look at like 5 to 10 pieces of your work and see what you're consistently doing. And that is part of your style. So yeah, that's the thing. Like, I didn't know that I even had a style, and a lot of people, struggle with this. But if I go look at their stuff, I feel differently, because some people might ask like, oh, I don't have a, how do you develop your style? Can you take a look at my work? And when I do that, they do have a style, and there's something that they consistently do or they're drawn to do, and that is part of your style.
Awesome. And I think, yeah, that's a really great suggestion, because some are yourself confused about your own style and you're not sure
Yeah.
which ways you're going, right? So other people are observing your work. You can go to your friends and you can reach out
Yeah.
to peers, and you can ask them, what do you think about the design and the art form, and probably you will understand from their suggestion and recommendation that where you exactly are going, and you can figure it out. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, Sonia, do you also sort of sell your artwork online or through Instagram or any other social platform?
So product is not my biggest thing at the moment. I'm just still figuring it out. The only one I have, and I can share with you guys, is I have like one t-shirt design that I have it available, but I don't really sell any artwork at the moment. But I can share this link if anybody's interested or interested in selling it. I use the place called threadless.com. You can sell a t-shirt there. So you guys can check that out. But currently I don't really have any products that I offer at the moment.
Okay, no issues. So I was asking this question because I also had this question in my list wherein people wanted to understand that, how they can sell their artwork and how they can find clients, and basically, how can they make a living out of it. So for those, one of the platform that I just suggested to you is about Print Shop by Designhill, which we are soon launching by the end of this
right.
month. Yeah. So in that ways, you don't have to take care of any marketing efforts or shipping efforts or any other efforts. You just have to do what you are best at, which is to create artwork or to come up with something innovative and different, and just have that thing on the products which are listed on the platform, and designer is doing all the job for you, and you'll get paid for the work that you have done. So we are soon launching that platform by end of this month. So you can check the website Print Shop by Designhill, and you can see how the whole platform work. It is the whole FAQ section and all the documents already there. You can try it out, and it will be open to clients by start of the next month. So you can actually start off by go there and start making money right there. So that's my answer to those who sort of wanted to understand how they can sell their artwork.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So moving forward to the next question. So one of the unique questions that we have received, since we are talking about storytelling through lettering and illustration, the question is that, is it possible to tell a story without using typography in illustration?
You could. Obviously, any illustration will do. For me, I think you can tell a better story with words and illustration. That's my thing. But obviously, yes, you could. Any kind of storytelling is possible with the illustration. It's just a matter of, but that's the thing, though. I feel like interpretation, it's open for interpretation. So it depends on your goal. If your goal is to just convey this emotion or provoke certain kind of emotion from your audience, then yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's not that important. I mean, I wouldn't say important per se, but it depends on the artist's goal. For me, I want to tell a specific story, and that comes from a quote and an illustration. So that's my thing. But yes, you could definitely tell a story, even just with typography, even without an illustration, you could tell a story, because typography has a different style too. Some looks aggressive versus some looks soft, right? So there's still those design aspects to it. So I think definitely just with typography or just with illustration, or even like a simple icon like a logo design, can tell a story.
So into the questions section, I see there are two more questions we have, and
Yes.
Divya is asking us that, do you suggest taking up professional courses to learn designs, or online tutorials which can be paid or free to enhance the skills?
That one, again, depends on your goal. For me, when I started out, I did not pay for any professional courses. Although if I did have that option, I would have. During that time, financially, we were struggling, so that wasn't an option for me. But really depends on your goal. This is what I can tell you, though, now that I did take some paid course, or even Skillshare is considered kind of like a paid course because you have to pay for membership and whatnot, versus YouTube, is that there's a less effort in terms of doing your research. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you go to Skillshare and you want to learn Adobe Illustrator. There is courses that are very structured. So you know if you take the course, you're going to learn XYZ. Now, if you go to YouTube, you're not going to be able to find a structured course like that. You have to be more proactive, what you want to learn, and search for that specific topic in order to learn something. So there's a little bit more effort on your side to learn. However, for me, again, personally, I learned Adobe Illustrator like from YouTube. So it is possible. So it depends on, number one, how much effort and proactive you're going to be on your side. Number two, there's a time constraint, because obviously being able to do the research and all that, it takes time. So how much time do you have, right? And number three, what are your goals at the end? Or if you are trying to have a certain kind of a project, let's say, for example, you want to be a web designer, I would think if I were to learn that, I would probably take a professional course and have that structured so that I could qualify for that kind of a job. So it really depends on your goals, the time you have, and your resources, right? If you can't really afford to pay for these classes, yes, it's still possible with YouTube.
Got that. Okay, so moving on to the next questions that we have in the list in the question section. Okay, we have
Mei Ling. I think we skipped that one. Mei Ling Liu. She said, hi, it's often frustrated as a beginning lettering artist to see what opportunities making lettering pieces on iPad will bring to the future. How do you stay motivated during times when you're feeling lost? Okay, I feel lost so many times. I can totally relate to this question. Okay, so number one, I do like to draw. I like to letter. So if anything, I do out of my joy. So that's number one. Number two, and this is part of the storytelling. If I'm feeling lost, I would letter about that. A lot of times my pieces are coming from my emotion, my experience, and I would letter something about being lost and kind of maybe try to create something that would speak to other people who's also lost. So maybe it could be more of a positive thing or encouraging thing. I will share my feelings, but I'm hoping that I will create something that would make my audience feel better, something like that. So that's number two. And then number three is, I like to think of it as planting the seed. So right now I'm creating something, I'm putting it out there, whether it's my website or other platform or Instagram, mostly Instagram right now. It might not bloom today. I mean, you plant a seed today doesn't mean it's gonna, come to fruition today. So I'm hoping or believing that one day it will. So I'm just trying to find a reason to keep going, because I feel like at the end of the day, you lose if you give up. So my goal here is, okay, well, yeah, I feel lost, and I'm sure everybody does at one point. How am I going to get through this? And that's by just staying positive, just create for joy, for other people, and believing that one day it's going to come back. So that's my answer to that. Hopefully that
That's a great
helped.
answer and a suggestion. Okay, so we have more questions, and the questions start coming.
Yes. Okay, so what software are you using in creating GIF? I use either Photoshop or Procreate. If it's simple enough, I do Procreate. The only reason I use Photoshop is because Procreate right now, and I know Procreate 5 is coming, so it might be different, but at this time, it cannot handle too many layers. So if the layers go crazy, then I cannot really use Procreate, and I use Photoshop. But mostly what you see on my Instagram page is through Procreate.
Okay, so
should I continue reading the other questions?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay, I am a newbie to Illustrator. However, I have been using Photoshop for quite some time. I am unable to move my mindset from Photoshop to Illustrator, so just how to make it easier. See, I was the opposite. So I started out as an illustrator, and I never really learned Photoshop. So when I started, I didn't do any raster artwork at all. So I was just so used to Illustrator. And then I actually just learned Procreate instead of Photoshop. So my transition was the opposite. So going from Photoshop to Illustrator, I have to say I think it is more challenging to go the other way around, because Photoshop is very, and I would assume it's similar as Procreate, where you just draw with your pen, right? So it's more intuitive. It's like you're just drawing. Illustrator is a little bit different because it's more point-based. I would say for this one, you just have to practice. I would say just practice with the Illustrator without touching Photoshop for a while. You have to get in. It's very different. So you have to get into that mindset of using the points and all that. But once you get to it, I will promise you, like, you will fall in love. I don't know. It's different, very different. But I would say just don't touch Photoshop for a bit, and then just get used to Illustrator and just force yourself to just create from Illustrator. And then once you're comfortable with it, then you can maybe go back to Photoshop. But I do think there's advantage of knowing both. But I could totally understand. It's really hard, like different, very different. I don't know, but I love Illustrator too. But I love like drawing like in Photoshop or Procreate. So, but it is definitely a different, I feel like it's even a different brain that I use to do.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So just a small announcement I would like to make here is that, guys, we have just 5 more minutes to go, 5 to 10 more minutes to go. So because we have course time constraint here. So if you have more questions, please put in the questions tab, and we will try to answer those questions. And if time doesn't allow us today to answer all of your questions, please go to after the AMA session, go to Sonia's Instagram account and
Oh yeah, you can DM me. Like I'm more than happy to, DM. Sometimes I do like Insta Live once in a while too, and I just answer questions that way too. So
yeah, so just
more
DM,
than,
and I'm not promising that she'll be answering you right now or today itself, but she'll definitely get back to you on that.
yes.
Yeah.
I see one more question. It says, have you ever struggled as a designer artist before? All the time. All the time. Yeah, I mean, even for the people that I look up to, they say they struggle. So it's nothing wrong to struggle, honestly. And I struggle all the time. Like, so yeah, I honestly think you just have to, as long as you don't give up, you can get through it. I think that's the biggest thing. When you're struggling, the question is, how are you going to deal with that struggle? Are you just going to give up? Or are you going to get through it? So if you are struggling, don't feel bad. Everybody does. People who I look up to does. People who is super skilled does. So it is just part of the process. Like, that's all I can say.
Yeah, and I think that's how it is, because everyone is struggling or probably facing some problems in their own field or in their own domain or in some way or another, right? It's just that you have to, pull it together and then move forward and do what
Yes.
you're doing at the best. Yeah. So
Yes.
that's a great advice. Okay. So let me see some more questions from my list. Okay. So a lot of Sonia, a lot of artists face when it comes to finding inspiration.
Yes.
A lot of artists out there would like to know that how, what are the ways, or which are the platforms, or how overall how can they find inspiration to come up with a great piece of work, or any good artwork out there. So what could be the sources of inspiration for them?
I think for me, it's really tell your story. I think any creative can, when they express themselves, I think it shows in the piece. So number one is just be yourself, and the inspiration for me, at least, it comes from myself. A lot of times my experience, my emotion, what I'm going through. And then when I do create something like that, that's really true to what I'm feeling, I feel like the audience is feeling the same thing, right? So that's number one. Just don't be afraid to be you, create that's you, and tell your story. So that's number one. But again, as I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with looking at other people's work. And I get inspiration all the time. Like, my favorite place that I like to go is Dribble and Instagram. I would scroll through some of the artwork, or somebody that I look up to. I have a handful of, like, let's say, lettering artists or illustrators that I highly look up to, and I will just sneak up on their work and see what they're doing. And then I would, have some goals or some ideas, and that's how I get inspiration. So it's, I think, two-part. So you don't want to just solely look at somebody else's work and be inspired by them, right? So you have to have a balance. You still have to be you. So that's where the copy thing comes in. Like, you don't want to copy to get too inspired that you're going to copy somebody else's work, right? So you do have a good handful of looking at, observing other art piece, but at the same time, you have to know who you are. You have to know what the story that you want to tell, and kind of combine those. So it's really the two parts to this, like your experience, your emotion, and then also what's out there.
Okay, and can you also talk about the tools and softwares that are sort of must have to learn to become a professional, designer or artist out there?
So I think really the main thing is you start with what you have. So I don't know if it's going to be a good answer to be like what you mean by professional artist, but for me, when I started, I just started with pencil and paper at the beginning, and then it moved on to Adobe Illustrator, right? So that's a software, and then iPad Pro and Procreate. So when you're starting out, start with what you have. Now, the second part is, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? So that's gonna, whatever your goal is gonna change what tools you need. So again, if you want to be more Illustrator based, then you'll most likely do raster digital work. So either you need Photoshop, or you might want to use Procreate, stuff like that. If you want to do branding and do logo design, then obviously you need to learn Adobe Illustrator. So that's the tool that you need. So I wouldn't say there's a must tool, like 5 tools you need to be a professional artist. It's really, at the beginning, start with what you have, and then as you go, you will know what you need. Like, when I started, and which I didn't know I was going to do logo design and doing logo, I just used my mouse to draw it on Adobe Illustrator. And then I just got so tired, my wrist was hurting, that I knew I had to invest in another tool, which was I got like a Wacom pad, right? So I think you would figure out as you go. So again, there's no like clear cut answer to this, but really depends on what you want to do ultimately.
Okay, okay, got that, got that. Also, Sonia, can you sort of help me understand about how while you create any artwork
Oh,
out there,
yes.
color combination plays one of the major important role to and that's how our artwork comes into a life and have that sort of image out there. So how color combination, how you decide of a color combination that will best go together?
Yes. So for color, I actually have a YouTube video for this. I will put a link here, but I can give you a quick answer to this. So color for me, it's really the message and emotion. That's a key thing. So what I mean by that is, again, if I'm talking about, let's say, for example, one of the quote I did was, comparison will kill you. So it's kind of like a dark quote. Then my color choices are going to match that quote. That's part of, again, the storytelling. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I think about how the typography is going to look, what the illustration is going to be, but a part of that element is also color. So I would probably choose very dark color, maybe not so many, right? Versus if I'm doing something motivating, something popping, then my color choices are going to be like that too. It's going to be bright, popping, energetic. So that's part of it. Now, what I recommend for those who maybe struggle with color, don't use too much. Don't go overboard. Again, it comes with practice. And as you get comfortable, you can always expand because there's no really right or wrong way of using color, in my opinion. As long as it looks good, it looks good, right? But if you are just not sure, just by looking at it, you can't tell if it looks good or not, then just start with maybe 3 to 5. Expand it slowly as you get comfortable. But again, I did create a YouTube video for this. I added in the link in the chat section. So if you want to look a little bit more on that, you guys can go ahead and do that.
So guys, you already have the resource to check out if you also
Yes.
are wondering that how the color combination can which colors will go together, and when to use which kind of colors and all of that. So if you're also struggling with that, you can go and check out the YouTube video. So I think all the questions that I had, and you have answered all the questions very nicely and in a very detailed way. And I'm sure that the audience and the live attendees that we had right now must would have enjoyed the whole session. So one last thing. That I would like to ask you on behalf of all the live audience right here and on the behalf of the whole community is, what are your last minute tips, or any tips and any suggestion or any recommendation that you would like to offer to the community so that they can be the best version of themselves?
I think I kind of mentioned it throughout, because part of my journey, it's very easy to get discouraged because there are so many talented people in this world. There are so many people who's good at whatever you're doing. There's always somebody better. So my message is always two things. Number one, whenever you're feeling like that, just kind of come back to your why. Like, why did you even start at this journey? Like, why are you doing it? Because that kind of puts me into perspective. Because if you were starting this to, let's say, oh, I just need to make money so I could feed my family, yes, that's a good motivation, but that's very hard to continue. Because if you find something better, then you're going to move on, because if that's money, right? So I always try to think of, okay, why did I even start at this? Like for me, I come from a different background, but why did I start this journey? Why did I continue? So understanding the why, that's important. Number two is, again, whoever, it's not the most talented people who kind of win this race, I feel like. It is the one who just keeps going. So as long as you don't give up, I feel like you're winning. So anytime you feel like giving up, I mean, if you need a little encouragement, DM me. Like, I will give you encouragement, and just find a reason to continue. And then I will ensure you, after 1 year from now or 2 years from now, like, you will look back and tell yourself, like, oh, thank goodness I didn't give up then. Like, I will guarantee that. So those are my two messages.
I just loved what you said here, that think of why you started it out at the first place, and and you will be again motivated to do the same thing if you are discouraged or disheartened, or are feeling demotivated because of any reason. So think
Yes.
of the why, and you will have all the answers. Okay.
Yes. I actually see one more question here. Are you planning on going to any conference next year? Would love to meet you in person. I want to say I'm seriously going to try my best to go to Letter West. I don't know if anybody knows this. It's a big lettering conference happening every year in Utah, Salt Lake City. So if anybody can join, that'd be awesome. So I'll try to be there.
Great, great. So I also, and one thing is really nice that I see here, that we have answered all the questions that were there in the questions tab, and that I had in my list. So that's awesome. So I just would like to, since we have limited time, thank all of you guys who have joined us
Yes.
in this live AMA session today. It was great having you, and I hope you have enjoyed this session. I rolled out few polls in between, and I see your answers. You were enjoying the session, and it was helpful to you. It was really nice to know. So thank you so much again, guys, for joining us. And thank you so much again, Sonia, for
Thank
taking out
you.
the time and for this amazing, helpful AMA session. It was amazing having you.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, you guys can DM me anytime.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So last question that
Yeah, that's
that is
fine.
that I would not like to miss. Andrew is wanna ask you that, would you ever teach a lettering workshop?
I don't have plans right now just because, again, I don't really have too much experience in lettering just yet. But if I am ready, I'll probably do something on YouTube. If something happens, like workshop wise, maybe it's local, but no plans at the moment. But I am, as I get better, if it happens, it'll be on YouTube for sure.
Okay. Oh, okay. One thing that I forgot to mention completely
Yes.
is about the Halloween challenge that Print Shop by Designhill is doing for the community. So all of you who are interested to participate in the challenge, you can go to Typography Designers Club. Let me just quickly write it in the chat section. That's the Instagram handle, which is called Typography Designers Club, and that's a big Halloween challenge that we are doing, wherein you guys will be getting some quite exciting gift prizes from us. So go there, check out what the challenge is, participate, and DM us in case of anything. So wrapping this whole session up again, Sonia, it was amazing having you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks, guys, for joining us. We hope to see you in the next AMA session. We keep on doing these sessions for the community. So you can follow us on Instagram
Yes.
on our Designhill page, which is Designhill DH, and Print Shop Global on Instagram, and you will get to know about the upcoming webinars and AMA sessions for you. Okay. Thanks,
Yep.
guys. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.